Welcome to Chamber Talk, brought to you by North Orange County Chamber, where we explore the stories and insights of leaders, business owners and CEOs from various sectors who are making a difference in our community and region. Whether you're tuning in via podcast or joining us via video, we're glad to have you here. Hello and welcome to Chamber Talk, the official podcast for North Orange County Chamber, where we highlight the people, politics, and stories shaping the regional economy and the communities. Today, we're honored to be joined by California State Senator Tony Strickland, who represents the 36th Senate District, a diverse and expansive region that spans across 2 counties, covering communities from Seal Beach, Huntington Beach, Newport Beach, San Clemente, Garner Grove, Westminster, Stanton, and La Palma, and extending into Los Angeles County, which is cities like Cerritos, Artesia, and Hawaiian Gardens. Thank you for coming on today, Senator. Really appreciate it.
Well, it's a privilege to be here. Thanks for having me on.
So I just wanted to start off with a few normal questions, really, because obviously you're not new to this world or this business, but of course, some of our listeners might not quite know everything about you. And I just wanted to start off with saying, what first sparked your interest to be in public service? Because you've been in it for a good 30 years now.
Yeah, well, I go back to when I was a little kid. I grew up during the Ronald Reagan administration. Reagan was an inspiration. I don't know why. I just loved his optimism, even as a little kid. I was actually asked coming out of 6th grade what I would give the president for Christmas. And I said, an American flag, because he's a true patriot. And I said, he wants to have you keep more of your hard-earned dollars, and he wants to beat back communism. Now, think about that, though. That's a 12-year-old that can articulate the president's policies. Not every president has a 12-year-old that could do that. That's why they called him the great communicator. And then on top of that, what helped foster that as well is I had an 8th grade teacher named Mr. Hybers, who's a Dutchman, who had a big stick and used to slap your desk. Now, I don't recommend that today, different era. But we all have those classes where you can't wait to get to school, to go to class. And I had him for both history, and I loved history, and geography. And he was an inspiration to me as well to look at this. Now, but if you asked me when I was young, I said I would say I would be a professional athlete. But I've always had 2 passions in my entire life ever since I was a little kid, at history, government, politics, as well as sports.
Now, you mentioned there, obviously, when you were young, and I do believe I'm reading some history out, you're a son of a drill sergeant, you're in the military. I'm assuming you were stationed all over the world. So where were some of these schools that you were at?
Well, actually, I was lucky. My older brother and my older sister, I had to move around with my dad. My dad is my hero in my life, and he's no longer with us. But my dad is a bona fide war hero. He earned a Bronze Star for Valor of the Tet Offensive. But on his 17th birthday, he dropped out of high school and went to fight in the Korean War and went to the Navy, did 3 years in the Navy. And after it was done, he said it was the coldest he's ever been. He dropped out and re-enlisted in the Army for 18 years. And actually, I was born at Fort Ord Army Base. After my dad got injured in Vietnam, he went to Fort Ord to train the boys to go back to Vietnam. And I was born in the hospital there. He actually retired when I was 4 years old. But I grew up in a family. You can imagine what it was like to have a drill sergeant for a dad.
Right.
Every minute I was late, I was grounded a week. My friends used to call my home Strickland, and everybody was scared of my dad. I was a little scared of my dad. But the biggest lesson I learned from my father, who is my hero in my life, is it's up to every generation to leave the next generation with more opportunities than what they had. And I think every generation has met that challenge in American history. And I think it's the first time in American history where that's in question. Are we going to leave our kids and grandkids with more opportunity? And that's what politics and government's about. It's about making a difference, not only for today, but to look forward.
Right.
And are you leaving a better tomorrow for your kids, grandkids, and for your community?
100% believe in that. Now, do you feel that, what are some of the personal principles that helped guide you through all that? Because there's quite a lot there.
I mean, there's so many different mentors in my life. And I always say, everybody I serve with, everybody has the right heart. We just have different life experiences on how to solve problems. I grew up in a military family, very strict, and I was taught from a young age that what you get out of life is what you put in, and the hard work you put in is what you get out. And the discipline I learned from my father really guided me. And I was a tremendous athlete when I was young. And think about team sports. People come from different life experiences to come together as a team to accomplish a goal. I think that experience of me being in team sports my whole life helps me be a better legislator because, again, I could go and talk to people who might disagree with me. And I have a famous saying my staff hears all the time. And you can agree to disagree without being disagreeable. But when people like you and you like them, you'll find where you have common ground and you won't take it personal if you disagree. Again, if I disagree with someone, it's just we have a different life experience, maybe a different constituency. But at the end of the day, we're all in it to try to make it better for people. That's why we're doing this. We're not doing this for ego. We're not doing this for money, certainly not for money. But you're doing it to try to make a difference. And I was an athlete. When I played basketball, at the end of the game, I always argue with the coach, give me the ball. I want the ball in my hands to make that last shot. And this is almost the same thing. I want the ball in my hands in order to make a difference for the next generation.
Now, you mentioned something a moment ago, which I say that a lot myself, because I really believe in it, about leaving what we're doing now for generations to come. And I think some of that's missed right now. Would you like to expand a little bit more about what you really mean by that?
Well, what I mean by that is just look at the generation before us. When I'll give you an example of Governor Pat Brown. Pat Brown built the state highway system, the state water system, and a lot of the infrastructure, the university system, the UC, CSU system. And if you look at what he spent, adjusting for inflation, he did it far cheaper than what we're doing today.
Mm-hmm.
One of the biggest sources of frustration I have with the legislature currently is I don't think we have a revenue problem in California. We have a wasteful spending problem. Mm-hmm. We're not doing enough oversight on the dollars. We're not treating those dollars as they were our own dollars. And we're not getting enough bang for the buck, so to speak. If we're going to spend a dollar somewhere, we better make sure that that dollar is spent wisely for all Californians. And I will tell you, I think we could do far better than what we're doing today. And that's why I came back to Sacramento. I don't need to be back in Sacramento to have the title. I already was a state senator 12 years ago. I came back because I want to make California golden again. It's the first time in California history where more people are leaving the state than coming in. Think about that. We live in an oasis. When my wife says, where are we going to go on vacation? I said, well, everybody in the world comes here because we have the best weather. Yeah. We have the best climate. And California is an unbelievably special place. And for people, just think about it in your head, for people to leave California, to go to the middle of the desert of Arizona, to go to the heat and humidity of Florida or Texas, or go to the cold weather in Montana and Idaho, we could do better. It's the first time since the gold rush where we have more people leaving coming in. And I think people are leaving because the jobs are leaving. We have an affordability crisis, and we're not doing enough to meet the needs of California residents. And that's why I'm going back to Sacramento to make it golden again.
So, just out of interest, when you were touching on that there, what things are you proposing or thinking about to change to make California better or more desirable to stay here or so we can work here?
Well, affordability is a big thing. Affordability, we have affordability crisis. Young people can't get a home. Young people, a hard time to get a job. And that's just a lack of, and I'll give you an example. One of my big examples is the gas crisis that we have here in California. It's almost coming to a perfect storm for hardworking California families. And when I say hardworking California families, I'm talking about those families that live paycheck to paycheck.
Right.
They can't afford these energy costs. They just can't afford it. Every year since Governor Newsom's been there, we've increased the gas tax. And over the last few years, we've increased the excise tax of gasoline by 253%. On top of that, Phillips 66 and Valero, who provide 20% of our production of gasoline, have now said we've overregulated them. They're leaving the state of California permanently. So USC's projected gas prices could go upward to $8 a gallon next year. Now, who does that fall on? It doesn't fall on the people who can afford it. It falls disproportionately on young people trying to make it,
right?
Are just starting out. Those families are living paycheck to paycheck. They can't afford those. And so one of the first bills I did was to defund the high-speed rail.
Yeah.
And it's a project that everybody in Sacramento knows it's not going to be built the way it was proposed to the people of California. Yeah. It was proposed to go from San Francisco down to Los Angeles. It's supposed to be done in 2020.
Right.
And it's supposed to be done for $33 billion. We've already overspent $33 billion. We don't have the track. And they already said we're not going from San Francisco to LA anymore. The new cost is over $100 billion, 123 to be specific, to go from Merced to Bakersfield. Now, one, I would argue that the people of California would never have voted for a train at that cost to go from Merced to Bakersfield. To understand $123 billion, my last time, a little over 10 years ago, about a decade ago, in Sacramento, the whole entire state budget, the whole enchilada was $98 billion. Think about it. This one project is more expensive than the whole entire state budget was less than 10 years ago.
That's huge.
For a train from Merced to Bakersfield. That's unacceptable. So what I would have done, because we keep putting $1 billion every year into this project,
Right.
One, I would stop. My dad always taught me, if you dig a hole for yourself, the best way to stop, to get out of that hole is to stop digging.
Right.
Let's defund and let's have a serious discussion of defunding this high-speed rail. And what I would do is lower the gas prices for all motorists in California. And we have the political will. We could do this overnight. We could drop those gas prices by 15 cents a gallon overnight if we had the political will to do so.
You could pull that money from
Now, even if they don't do that, I still say the high-speed rail is a waste of resources and money because there's other shovel-ready projects in Los Angeles. For example, Metro. They come to Sacramento. They need a lot of projects being done. They're shovel-ready that will help us with economic development when we have the World Cup coming here.
Right.
We have the Olympics coming here. And we could build an infrastructure that goes beyond those Olympic Games that serve all the people of California instead of a train that goes from Merced to Bakersfield that's already been mismanaged beyond belief.
Now, I may ask you, because, this is a big deal, isn't it? So that high-speed train was 520 miles originally. It was the original one was LA to San Francisco. Did that many people travel from here to San Francisco that we needed such a rail?
I argued against it back then because they couldn't tell you what the market research couldn't tell you of the traveling. I asked a basic question that any business would do. What are you going to charge per ticket?
Right.
They didn't have a clue there. They didn't do the market research on how many people use it. The time, how long will it take? They couldn't tell me. How long will it take to get from San Francisco to LA? That's a big deal. If it takes like 8 hours, who's going to do that? They'll take the flight. They'll fly, right? Or they'll drive.
Yeah.
And how high speed is it really when you have 13 stops?
Yeah.
They call it high speed, but
Right.
you have 13 stops. Is it really high speed?
Yeah.
So those are the questions that they couldn't even answer back then.
Wow.
And so my last vote in the legislature, my very last vote was against the high-speed rail because they couldn't answer those basic questions. Unlike the train, by the way, that's going to go from Orange County to Las Vegas.
Right.
That has private funding.
Mm-hmm.
They can tell you the price of it, and they
Yeah.
can tell you why you would do it.
Right.
Think about this. This sounds fantastic. You go to a train, you drop off your bags. The next time you see those bags are in your hotel room at Caesar's Palace.
Right.
Or Bellagio.
Sure.
And you could start your vacation the moment you step on that train.
Right. Right.
Now, I could sell that.
Yeah. And you can see
private
how it
enterprise. Private enterprise
Yeah.
can sell it. And it is a trap that a lot of people do
Yeah.
from Southern California to Los
They
Angeles.
did. Yeah.
They did none of this on this high-speed rail. And again, I believe in public-private partnerships. And I think we missed the boat on that. Florida's governor said that they did a train from Miami to Orlando at zero cost to the taxpayers. And that's a difference between Florida and California. And again, I think we could do better in California. And this is a project. I think we can do big projects in California, but we're not doing enough oversight because this has been a disaster from day one.
Now, you've been in politics for a long time and you've had plenty of experience from city level all the way up to Senate. What makes you think that the folks who are making these decisions on our behalf, right,
Mhm.
the people, that they don't ask those questions like, oh, what's the cost? What's it going to be? I mean, why is that? Why doesn't that happen?
I think a lot of times it's stubborn. A lot of people don't admit that they made a mistake. And they dig in, and then once they dig in a bit deeper and deeper. As I said to my dad, best way to get out of that hole is to stop digging.
That's right.
They keep digging. This was a proposal that was done by Jerry Brown. Gavin Newsom had no reason to dig in, but he did.
Right.
And now my gut feeling says whoever the next governor of California, he or she will step in and say, we're stopping this project. I firmly believe that.
Right.
But you ask a question, and a lot of times people aren't willing to say they made a mistake. And unfortunately, we're taking billions of dollars from hardworking taxpayers,
Right.
I believe, wasting dollars that could be better spent in other areas that are better and more beneficial for California residents.
Now we're, you're in your 100th day, I think, right?
A little over 100.
A little over 100. So, what's been front and center for you over these past 100 days?
Well, it's the front and center of who I am as a person. I think the most essential role of government is public safety. Public safety on the national level is national security, but at the state and local level is keeping your citizens safe. I was at the forefront when I was mayor of Huntington Beach on Prop 36. And Prop 36 was something I campaigned for that passed last November at almost 70% of the vote. Now, Prop 36, I use the tagline, making crime illegal again in California. But for it to get 70% of the vote, and by the way, I've been doing this, as you said, a long time. I have yet to remember a last initiative that passed all 58 counties in California.
Mm-hmm.
Even the most liberal counties of San Francisco, Marin voted in the affirmative of Prop 36. People were tired of the smash and grabs.
Yeah.
People were tired about people going in the broad daylight, stealing and walking out the door. It's just not right.
Yeah.
And people are tired also of the mental health crisis we have in California.
Right.
I don't think it's compassionate to leave someone on the ground. I think we owe it to them to get the mental health services that they deserve, whether that's mental health or drug, alcohol addiction issues. We should get them off the streets and back up on their feet. And we have the ability to do so. And we passed Prop 36, and Democrats, independents, and Republicans to get 70% of the vote in California. We had an overwhelming among Democrats, independents, and Republicans voted for this. Biggest source of frustration my first 100 days is the fact of the matter is Governor Newsom didn't fund it at zero.
Wow.
Zero. And he had 2 opportunities to fund 36, and he refused to do so. In fact, he tried maneuvers to get that initiative from not even making it to the voters.
Really?
Well, the maneuvers didn't work. He went to the voters. It passed overwhelmingly. You would think the voice of Californians have spoken. They want to make this a priority. They want to make public safety a top priority to keep us safe. He said no. Now, I will give credit to Senator Umberg, who's from here in Anaheim. He's a good friend, even though he's a Democrat Republican.
Yeah.
He fought to try to get some of the funding in. I was fighting for $400 million. I believe that's scratching the surface in terms of funding for Prop 36, because I believe the mental health problem in California is worse than anybody thinks it is.
Right.
He fought for funding, but he only got $100 million out of the governor in the final budget, and $100 million for 3 years, not $400 million ongoing every year as I proposed, as the proponents proposed.
Right.
And a big part of why it might fail is the $100 million that they put in over 3 years. They put zero money in for probation, which is an essential part of the initiative.
Oh, right.
Essential. So what they really want to do is not make that successful, which I think keeps us more unsafe, which goes against the very fabric of what I think the number one role of government is. In the budget, a budget is nothing but your priorities. Right. When you have a budget for your business, when you're home, family budget, first thing you pay for is your mortgage, your rent, you pay for your food, you pay for the essentials, right? I think public safety, this should have been the first thing funded in the state government. Right. And again, 70% of Californians believe the same. Right. So we ended up with that, but at the same time, we're funding $1 billion to a train that goes to nowhere, or it's been wasteful. We have $750 million that was spent on bailing out the Bay Area transit. And then they put in $50 million just to sue the federal government whenever Donald Trump does something, they sue. And again, I don't think that's the best use of our tax dollars. And they were willing to spend here, but they weren't willing to spend what I thought was the most essential role of government.
So, Senator, you were mentioning a few things just then about obviously where the money was getting spent and where it could be better spent. Is there a way of the Senate to be able to persuade, let's say, the governor's office to change this around, or is it just continuously loggerheads?
Well, it's loggerheads in the fact of the way we do things in government. For example, last year's budget becomes the baseline for next year's budget, unlike a business where you have zero-based budgeting.
Right.
Here, if you're spending money on a program, and just say next year with a cost of living adjustment, it's supposed to go up 10% and you only increase it 5%, they call that a 5% cut. Only in government can you increase spending into a program and someone call it a cut. I believe in zero-based budgeting, but I also, one of the biggest reforms we have to do, I think, is when we spend money on a program, for example, we spent $27 billion on homelessness with Governor Newsom. And during that time, homelessness got worse, not better. We need to say, okay, it went to all these nonprofits. We need to follow that money and say, was this effective? And if it wasn't effective, where do we make a mistake? And don't keep throwing good money after bad into a program that's not working. We need more oversight, and we need to look at programs when we spend. Everybody says, well, this is money to spend for X. Mm-hmm. But no one follows after we pass the budget and the appropriation for X to say, well, did X do what it is intended to do? And follow that program, follow that. And we don't do enough of that in any form of government, whether it's state, federal, or local government. We need to do more of that. And again, I think the key is to treat these dollars as if it was your own family budget.
Right.
It's easy to spend other people's money.
Of course.
And a lot of times, people say, go. Oh, these are federal dollars that are coming in. Well, federal dollars are our money as well. Yeah. Like state dollars coming down to local government. Mm-hmm. That's still our tax dollars. Yeah. And so we need to make sure we make those wise investments. Again, the whole reason why we're doing this is to make it better for the next generation.
Now, you mentioned also earlier about homelessness and also about mental health. Mm-hmm. And, obviously, I don't think it's a good idea just to leave people at it. We're going to help them out. And prior to recording the episode, we were talking about Reagan days and things like that. I believe I wasn't here then, mm-hmm. but a lot of these I don't know what you call them, special hospitals or hospices or whatever, used to look after a lot of people with mental health. Do you feel that that's something that we have to look at moving forward to bring back, or is it just we need better medical health?
We need more investment in mental health. One of the biggest mistakes that Governor Ronald Reagan made was defunding a lot of the mental health issues. I grew up in Simi Valley in Ventura County, and they had the largest mental health hospital right next door in Camarillo. They shut that down. It's Cal State University Channel Islands now. But there's no question that there's a lot of folks who needed help that they put out on the street, and a lot of those people end up on the street. And so we need more investment into mental health programs. There may be former people who served in the military that have PTSD. Mm-hmm. We need to make sure we do whatever we can to get people the help that they deserve and that they need. But I also think when we talk about homelessness, it's not only that person on the ground, but it's not fair to communities. Like when I was mayor of Huntington Beach, one of the biggest issues we campaigned on was to clean up the homeless problem in Huntington Beach. Huntington Beach now has a 68% drop since I became mayor of Huntington Beach because we enforce our encampment laws. It is not right that parents couldn't take their kids to a playground without having urine and feces on the slide and swings.
Right.
It's not fair to that business owner that was on Main Street that we had homelessness close the main street, and they had homelessness in front of their business, that we're being a little bit aggressive.
Right.
That's not right to our businesses. And again, Huntington Beach was a destination city.
That's true, yeah.
So we make a lot of money on tourism. If people come and have a bad experience, they're not coming back.
Right,
they're not coming back.
Right.
So again, public safety, in my opinion, being former mayor, one of my top jobs was to clean up the homeless situation. Now, what we had was a navigation center that said we can move someone from the ground and get to the navigation center and get county services that they deserve, the mental health and other services they deserve, get them off the street and hopefully back up on their feet. But it also was a quality of life issue for the people of Huntington Beach. And now when I walk down Main Street, so many business owners come up to me and said, your team and you helped save our business because we were about to go out of business with the problem that we had.
Now, you mentioned a point there that obviously the encampments and things, you have to move them on, and there's a little bit more of a responsibility to that, isn't there? Because, you can move them along, but where do they move to? Mm-hmm. And you were talking about the navigation system centres. Do you feel that that's being wisely managed and it's going in the right direction?
Well, I think it's going in the right direction. Again, just look at the Huntington Beach as the model.
Right.
It actually worked tremendously. Our citizens were happier, and we had the bed for them. In fact, if the navigation center had overflow, we also had a hotel for overflow in case that happened. Now, we had to do that in Huntington Beach because we weren't getting enough county services. Now we have a new county supervisor. Hopefully we get more county services that helps with what we're doing in Huntington Beach. But I think we were a model when I was mayor of what a city can do when it comes to homelessness.
Now, you've been working on Prop 36. I know that our local senator as well, Tom Omberg's been working on this. And the main thing is about obviously changing the legal system with crime and things like that, which you're big on. What we didn't talk about was Prop 47, which came in 2014. I think was it 57 now.
Right.
You want to share a little bit about what's going on with that?
47 and 57 made crime okay. And really, Prop 36 was a response to those two initiatives that clearly didn't work for the people of California. They were sold that, oh, we're going to save all this money, we're going to not have people in prison, and they're going to look the other way. Clearly, that didn't work, and that's why you had Prop 36. That's why you had a large contingency of Democrats, Independents, and Republicans. I believe the first person that came forward was the Democratic mayor of San Jose. But I worked on that campaign across the aisle with a whole bunch of leaders there on the Democratic side to, again, make crime illegal again. And really, Prop 36 was a response because those two initiatives were not working for the people of California.
Now, you mentioned also about the funding for this, and again, you know, between the state and the federal government and things like that. How do you, as a senator, how do you see or able to persuade the powers that be that hold the checkbooks to give money towards this?
Well, I'm going to keep on this. I think it's a slap in the face that we only did $100 million for 3 years, and I'm not going to let it go. Here's the thing. A lot of times people and legislators will just move on to the next issue. I think this is such a fundamental issue. I'm going to be working with law enforcement. I'm going to be working with the DAs. I'm going to be working with public safety, and I'm going to get on shows like yours and others to explain to the people of California, because a lot of times when people pass an initiative, they say, "Oh, we passed it." They're gonna move forward on what we said. The legislature's not doing that, and so I will be a bulldog when it comes to this issue. And you haven't heard the last of me talking about Prop 36. I'm going to keep every avenue that I have to go to fundamentally try to get that funding for 36 is what I'm going to do.
So talking about, you know, Prop 36, sort of like streams into what's going on right now with all the different cities seeing ICE agents coming in and things like that. What is your take on that generally?
Well, I think, again, look in the mirror, look, Obama, Clinton, Bush, all the past presidents had mass deportations. What was fundamentally different between those presidents and President Trump is that we have all these sanctuary cities and sanctuary state law now, where a state agency, law enforcement agency, or a local law enforcement agency are told by their elected leaders not to work with the federal government. So now we have chaos because now it's not a clean work with, okay, we're going to go after these people who commit crime, these folks who are here illegally that did X, Y, and Z. Now it's in our communities because we have these sanctuary city laws and sanctuary state laws. As mayor of Huntington Beach, I passed an ordinance that said we're a non-sanctuary city. If the federal government and ICE come in here, we're going to work collaboratively together. I firmly believe that none of this chaos would have happened if we didn't have the sanctuary state or sanctuary city laws.
Now, on that point, and I'm asking because, you know, I am an immigrant, but also I wasn't here at the time for some of these administrations. You know, we hear that there were millions of people who were you know, sent back to wherever they came from back in the day. So what's the difference now? Like, was it people just didn't see it happening back with these other administrations, or we're only seeing it now because there's more?
Well, I think it was clear because the federal ICE agents worked with your local law enforcement or your local state law enforcement, and they actually went and worked together to make sure that they deported the right people. And now, because we're not having local agencies work with the federal ICE, now they're out there and they're not working with local agencies. So now you're seeing it happening in your SWAT meets. You're seeing it happening in your drive-in theaters. You're seeing it happening in your car washes. Look, and then also over the end of the day, the overall issue, whether you agree or you disagree, President Trump said in his campaign, as a cornerstone of his campaign, I'm going to enforce my federal immigration laws.
Yeah.
That's what we have elections for.
Right.
He has that voice in the Oval Office in large portion because a lot of people voted for him to follow through on that issue. Now, I'll admit, a lot of people here in California don't agree with the president on that issue.
Sure.
But that's what elections are for. And whether you like the policy or not, the president campaigned and said, I am going to enforce our federal immigration system, and I'm going to move forward on that wall to make sure we don't have millions of people here that we don't know who's where. In the last administration, I think we put ourselves in more harm's way by letting people come in here and you don't know who's here. And there's a lot of drug cartel and there's a lot of gangs. There's a lot of folks here that are here illegally to do harm to American citizens. So again, I think when you talk about this issue, this is an issue that's not surprising to me because Trump campaigned on that he's going to enforce our federal immigration law. The only reason why we see some of this chaos that quite frankly no one wants to see is because we have these sanctuary state and sanctuary city laws.
So talking about obviously immigration sort of leads us into the next thing, which was a big deal in the last voting campaigns, wasn't it? About voter ID. Mm-hmm. Now I do believe there's 36 states have some type of thing, and then the other 14 don't. And I know this is something that's on your radar. You want to share a little bit about that?
I'm co-author of the statewide initiative that's going to come on the ballot in 2026. Look, this is not a Democrat or Republican issue. This is a faith in our election outcomes issue.
Right.
3 presidential candidates have called in question the election outcome since 2000, and both Democrat and Republican. End of the day, people have to have faith in our election outcome. Otherwise, our democracy doesn't work. And to bring in safeguards like proof of citizenship and voter ID are essential. And if you do a poll, overwhelmingly, Democrats, Independents, and Republicans support this. In fact, our internal polls said over 70% of Californians support this. So I'm pushing very hard. The only people who are not supporting this are legislators up in Sacramento. For whatever reason, I don't know. But to have safeguards that says, hey, you are who you say you are, you're a citizen, and we're having voter ID and identification. Look, identification is used to get on a plane. Identification is used in terms of getting your prescription medicine. You need your identification to almost every part of your life. And so to vote, when I talk to people who I'm on part of these national groups where leaders from other countries, they think it's crazy if you don't ask for identification in terms of voting. So I think it's simplistic. I think it's going to pass come 2026. I am the only author of a voter ID initiative that's actually implemented. We did that in Huntington Beach. The state of California sued us. We've now won twice in court. And so Huntington Beach will be the first city in California that actually goes forward with a voter identification law.
Now, I'm assuming, because you're right, like, to me, it doesn't make sense. Like in Europe, we have to prove, well, you get checked off, because then you know where you live and all the rest of it. So is that just something that just was never, it wasn't here before? Is it? It's just, so it's time to change.
No, it's absolutely. And again, we have so many different laws here in California that are different. For example, we have ballot harvesting laws that says you can go and pick up as many ballots as you want. That's illegal in almost the rest of the country. Look, end of the day, I think people have to have faith in the election outcome, and I think voter identification laws and proof of citizenship is essential to the faith of the election outcome, because our democracy doesn't work if we don't have faith in that election outcome.
Well, it's very important, really, isn't it? Right? On either side, regardless of what you want.
Exactly. And again, the polling shows 70% of Californians support this. And again, going back to that other initiative, 36, to get 70% of the vote in California, or where they're at right now, 68 to 70%, you need a large amount of Democrats, Independents, and Republicans saying, yes, that's a good idea.
That's true.
I firmly believe we get this on the ballot, which I'm a co-chair of this initiative, it will pass. And then I think fundamentally, I think it's better for our democracy.
Now, I know this would have been a big deal for you when you were mayor, and particularly Huntington Beach. It's sort of almost like people say it with a smile on their face at Huntington Beach.
A big smile on
really always is fighting and sticking it to whoever. But what about the state's housing mandates?
Well, I mean, look, what they forced and try to force on Huntington Beach, look, I'm pro-growth and I'm pro-housing. But what they try to do to Huntington Beach is just fundamentally trying to turn a suburban community into an urban center. Nothing wrong with urban living. In fact, out of college, I almost moved to New York because I love New York City. I love going to LA, but a lot of folks in Huntington Beach moved to Huntington Beach because they like that suburban coastal feel. To understand what that mandate was, we would have to do 50 high high-rise, high-density apartment buildings throughout the city and almost increase our population by 50%. Well, it would turn a suburban community into an urban center overnight, and that's not what people want in Huntington Beach. Now, again, if you want to live in an urban community, go to San Francisco, go to Los Angeles. Nothing wrong with it. But I would even say suburban. Like my sister likes to live in rural areas.
Right.
Some people like rural living. Some people like urban living. Some people like suburban living. Too many people in Sacramento want urban lifestyle for the rest of us. And at the end of the day, that's not what my citizens wanted. And so we pushed back. And we said, this is fundamentally unfair. And also what's unfair is 95% of Californians live in 5% of the area space.
Right.
If really the governor is serious about housing, he would do some kind of incentives to do some kind of incentives in that 95%. Well, he's not. In fact, they're stopping developments from happening in the Inland Empire as those cities want the growth. And he's stopping that from happening. If you really have a housing crisis, you would do that. And the other thing that's fundamentally unfair, they give this big number to Huntington Beach. But do you know what Marin County got, his home county, Gavin Newsom? You know what their mandate was? Zero. And he's in the wine business. Not a lot of people know this, but he's in the wine business in Napa. You know what Napa's housing mandate was? Zero.
Wow.
So again, it was Gavin Newsom that says it's good for other people, but not for himself. Not for his home community, but for Huntington Beach. Just like the COVID crisis. During the COVID crisis, he said none of our children could go to in-person school. His kids got to go to in-person school. He said none of us could have go out to a restaurant. He went to the French Laundry without masks, but he told us that we couldn't do it. So I think that's fundamentally unfair for any leader to pass a law that you're not going to apply to yourself.
Now, out of interest, why does it seem that this housing mandate's so concentrated into the immediate, like, in the city, whereas like if we look back, you know, the Romans back in the day, you had a lot going on in the city, and then you'd move out, and then why don't they look at it that way?
Well, I think it's a fundamental issue for many of the left. They want to outlaw the car, and really what it comes down to, when you look at California, there's a reason why we have the highest gas tax in the country. The reason why we have the highest car registration fee in the country, a reason why we don't spend a lot of money on roads and highways, but we spend a lot of money on mass transit, and a one-size-fits-all. A lot of the folks up in Sacramento come from urban areas. They want to have that one-size-fits-all and put all suburban communities and make them urban. And I just think that's fundamentally not right. And quite frankly, when you look at California, the way it was built, look, I like New York. I love going to New York. New York is fantastic. It was built around the horse carriage, and so it's built up, and you can be dropped off one block from where you have to go. And London, same thing. If you have to go somewhere, you can be 1 or 2 blocks away when you use that system. San Francisco, built around the horse carriage. You could do the same. But Southern California is built around the automobile. There's no way to build mass transit to get you 1 or 2 blocks from where you have to go. And, you know, it's a shock. I just yesterday had a hearing where the MetroLink president said, you know, Californians are in love with their cars and our ridership is dramatically down. Well, that's not a shock to me, because at the end of the day, people in California, driving is part of our culture. Cars are part of our culture. And we're built around the automobile. So they're trying to change something that I think is just fundamentally, they can keep throwing money there, but the riders are not using it.
Well, what sort of really doesn't make sense when you look at it is the fact that, you know, we can manufacture less here in the state of California. So solar panels, everything that they want to do with electricity, it's not done here, so it's no money. The majority of oil and petroleum and stuff is here in California, but yet we don't want to have cars. Like, it doesn't really make sense for our economy as we're moving forward. Like you mentioned at the very beginning of this podcast, you were talking about we want to leave the world in a better place for the future. It sort of doesn't sort of like figure that out, does it really?
I'm all in terms of energy. I'm one of the leading Republicans talking about renewable energy, and I do think technology and free market capitalism will turn a lot of those companies into very successful companies. But I'm also understanding that you need a blending of everything. I think we need to be energy independent in California, and we have the ability to do so. And what does that do? It also says we're not relying on foreign countries to come in, and also that, by the way, that fund terrorist networks that then we have to defend against. So we're not importing energy from there. And then on top of it, it creates jobs, much needed jobs, and it grows our economy. So it's a win-win. You increase our economy and we build here, and it's a national security issue on top of it. So I think we should be energy independent in California, especially in the United States of America. So when we were talking about, for example, in Sacramento about the fires and Gavin Newsom complaining about the tariffs coming in and says, well, we can't rebuild LA because we're taking lumber from Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what I said was we used to have a robust lumber industry in California that you regulated out of business.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't we fire up those mills in California and create those jobs and have that industry do and be vibrant and help us build more homes throughout California?
Might stop some forest fires if you get rid of some of that wood.
Exactly.
Cut it back a little bit.
Correct.
Like it's supposed to be
Forest
done.
management.
Right.
Correct.
So on that point about AI, what's concerning to me in the chamber with business is, I'll go to the local, supermarket, let's say, and back in the day, maybe there were like 6 or 7 registers there helping us out, but now it's all like self-service, it's all going AI. In time, that means that there's going to be more people unemployed. What are they going to train to do?
Mm-hmm.
In your world, where do you see that's progressing to?
Well, I think that's fundamentally the history of economics, isn't it? When you look at energy, we talked about energy. Rockefeller, everybody thinks he made most of his money off of oil. No, he made his money off of kerosene. And he was the one that fought against J.P. Morgan and Edison that came up with this new technology called electricity, that they were bringing electricity to homes. And he fought hard against that change. People, when they brought in cars, the people who worked on the horse carriages fought really hard. That's part of free market capitalism. That's part of economy in general. You're going to get new technologies. And when you bring in those new technologies, you're upsetting the previous technology. And so that's just, people will adjust as we create those new technologies, and those new jobs will come out and people will have more and more robust opportunities. I believe in free market capitalism. And again, if you look at history, it's helped us be the leader of the world because people will invest and they'll invest in those new technologies. And what ends up happening is our life ends up being better. Because people create a technology that is better for people. And at the end of the day, if you ask me today, would I rather be me, Tony Strickland, today, or J.P. Morgan back then? I'd rather be me today because J.P. Morgan didn't have a lot of the luxuries that we take for granted here.
That's true.
Even though he was the richest person in the world back 100 years ago.
That's true.
Because our lives are fundamentally far better than they were back then, even for the richest man in the world.
Just before we come to a close, where we're going to ask you if you've got any final words or if we missed something, I just did want to do there's only like 3 few personal sort of like wrap up quick fire questions, if you don't mind. So the first one is there a book, quote, or mentor that really influenced your political outlook?
So a book, I'm a big believer in Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins is an inspiration to me. He had a book called Unlimited Power and the Awaken the Giant Within. I've gone to a few of his seminars, and really it's about the power of positive thinking. So those are the books that I really love. I also like to read a lot of biographies. And I'm a sports athlete. So one of my favorite, 2 of my favorite quotes is failure to prepare is preparing to fail by John Wooden. And another one I tell my boy is by Coach Herrick, who also coached UCLA. He used to say, those who stay up with the owls at night don't soar with the eagles in the morning. And my message is get your rest. So there's a lot of quotes I come up with. I love Winston Churchill. One of Winston Churchill's quotes, you never get indigestion by eating your words. And Winston Churchill also said, and this is personal for me, in death, you can only die once, but in politics, many, many times. And that's true as well. Yeah. So there's many quotes, many different folks that I follow, but those are the books and quotes that I would probably quote the most.
And obviously, you're big in sports. Who are your favorite teams?
So my favorite baseball team is the Dodgers. I grew up and Steve Garvey was my favorite player. And then the Lakers, I grew up during Showtime. Magic Johnson, you don't get better than Magic Johnson than Showtime. So as a kid in LA, I was spoiled with Vin Scully and Chick Hearn and Magic and the Dodgers. So I was very spoiled growing up. And then my football team is actually out of the box. And most people, But my favorite football team is the Dallas Cowboys. And the reason was their training camp was in Thousand Oaks when I was a little kid in Simi Valley. My mom used to drop me off at the training camp, and I was there all day, every day for the whole summer. And Tom Landry, a famous coach, knew me by name and said, "Hi, Tony." And the players knew me by name. I got to throw and catch the ball with them. So I've been a diehard Cowboy fan my whole life, which is not easy being a Cowboy fan recently.
That's cool, though. That's a cool story. So when you're not working, what's your go-away to relax? Like, what is it? Huntington Beach, maybe?
Yeah.
What's your favorite?
No, one of my favorite things to do is go to brunch with my wife and my dog, Winston. He's a Cavalier King Charles, named after Winston Churchill. Wow. And we go to Central Park. We order our brunch, and then we walk around the park with Winston. It's one of my favorite things to do, is spending time not only with my wife, but my dog. I spoil my dog, and I love my Winston. Winston, when I come home, he's so excited to see me all the time. And there's nothing quite like having, as they always said in politics, if you want a friend, get a dog.
That's true. That's true. So if it wasn't for politics, what do you think you'd be doing instead?
I think I would be a college basketball coach. Actually, early on, I did coach. I was assistant coach for the Whittier College basketball team. But I actually played semi-pro basketball for the IBL, International Basketball League, for the Los Angeles Lightning. There was always that passion where I had both going on, and I had more opportunities. I ended up getting elected when I was 27 in the state legislature. But I always wondered in the back of my mind, what would have happened if I took that basketball route? Well, if I played basketball, I would probably play basketball for 10, 12 years, and then I would have gone into coaching. So if I wasn't doing the political thing, I think currently I would be probably a very good college basketball coach.
I can imagine that. You've got good energy. So as we're coming towards the end of today's episode, as I just mentioned earlier, we always, give our guests that time to free mic type of thing, rather than firing out questions. And I suppose, really, what would you like to share with the audience, or even District 36?
Well, I would say the biggest lesson that I've learned is you could agree to disagree without being disagreeable. Too many people these days expect people to agree with them 100% of the time. And quite frankly, I don't agree with my wife 100% of the time. So I'm not going to agree with constituents 100% of the time. Just know at the end of the day, I work as hard as I can to try to make things better for the next generation. And I also have deep respect to those who disagree with me, because I always try to put myself in their position and understand where they're coming from. And I think the good legislators are ones that get along with everybody, that could agree to disagree without being disagreeable. And politics is a game of addition, not subtraction. So when you could add people to a coalition to get something done, that's a big positive. And so I'm grateful to be in this position. I know there's 1,000 people in my district that would love to be in my seat, but it's a privilege to serve the people of California. And I'm going to do the best job I can to try to make a big difference for the next generation of Californians.
Well, Tony, I'd like to say thank you so very much for coming on today, and it's been a privilege, and I've really enjoyed our conversation, and also thank you so very much for your service.
I appreciate you, and thanks so much for having me on. I'll come back anytime I'm invited.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you, listeners, for tuning in to Chamber Talk. Until next time, stay inspired and connected by visiting NOCChamber.com and selecting Sign Up for News at the homepage. For more interviews, visit chambertalk.podbean.com.